Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. A close friend tipped me off that my wife of 27 years was unfaithful. It was Owen, my longtime buddy, who made the call while I was at work. He told me he had just seen Violet, my wife, walking hand in hand with another man into a shabby hotel on the edge of town. He'd even taken some photos on his phone. Naturally, I didn't believe it at first. It seemed absurd, and I thought there had to be some reasonable explanation for why Violet would be entering a hotel room in the middle of a workday with someone else. My name's Joseph, by the way. I asked Owen to send the photos immediately. Staring at the screen, I was stunned. There was no doubt. It was her. That night, I tried to keep things casual and asked her how her day had gone, if she'd stepped out for lunch. To my shock, she lied smoothly, saying she had eaten lunch at her desk. I pressed her, asking if she was absolutely sure she hadn't gone out. The way she responded threw me off even more. She got defensive, asking angrily if I was accusing her of lying. Her reaction was devoid of guilt, and I felt trapped. The pictures and her denial didn't give me the concrete proof I wanted. So, like many husbands suspecting infidelity, I turned to a private investigator. What I encountered at the PI's office was unexpected. Instead of a stereotypical dim, smoky room with a grizzled ex-cop, I was met by two tech-savvy young professionals in a modern office space. Their expertise and knowledge of digital investigation impressed me, though their services didn't come cheap. But what they lacked in affordability, they made up for in effectiveness. 2 weeks later, I was back at their office, and they handed me a folder with a complete report, including photos and video evidence. The details were brutal. Violet wasn't seeing just one other man, but two. One was a co-worker, a salesman named Julian Taylor, whom she'd been involved with for over a year. The other was Charles Jackson, a mechanic she'd met when getting her car fixed a few months back. With all the proof in hand, I went straight to a divorce attorney. If this had been a one-off affair, maybe I could have found it in me to forgive her. But learning she'd been seeing other men for over a year made that impossible. The investigator's report included transcripts from her meetings with Julian, suggesting he was far from her first affair. From these conversations, it was clear that Violet was enjoying her double life. She liked the stable, secure life I'd built for us while savoring her time with other men. Violet had a job, but it was my business that gave us a comfortable lifestyle. It funded our sons' and daughters' education at their prestigious universities. Sitting in the attorney's office was eye-opening. I learned that divorce laws didn't much care about who was at fault. They were designed to divide assets equally, often to the husband's detriment. My lawyer was sympathetic but confirmed the harsh reality. Violet would likely walk away with half of everything, and I might even need to sell the business to settle the financial split. And on top of that, I'd be paying alimony for her to continue her life with other men. At least our kids were out of the house by then. As for our home, she'd probably get that too. After leaving the attorney's office, I felt a mix of rage and despair. That evening, I had a meeting scheduled with my accountant, Jerry, to discuss some positive news. My business was about to cross the $10 million valuation mark, thanks to 3 major new accounts. Halfway through his presentation, though, Jerry stopped and gave me a concerned look. "Joseph, I'm giving you incredible news. Your hard work has finally paid off, and you look miserable," he said. I took a deep breath and explained the situation. Violet's betrayal, the lawyer's prediction that she would get half, and the possibility I'd have to dissolve the company to pay her off. Not to mention, I'd be stuck with monthly alimony that would fund her life with her lovers. At least the kids were out of the picture. Then, there was the house. I'd probably lose that too. Jerry sympathized, offering to postpone our meeting until I felt more focused. He packed up and headed back to his office, but later that day, he called me back. "Joseph, can you stop by my office on your way home? I have an idea." I was willing to delay facing Violet, so I drove over. In his office, Jerry shut the door and looked at me seriously. "First, I need to confirm something," he began. "You've always told me that Violet had very little involvement or interest in your business. Is that still true?" I nodded, still not fully understanding where he was heading. So, you're saying she has no clue that the worth of your company is about to skyrocket, he continued. That's correct, I replied. I've never really discussed the business with her much, and honestly, we haven't talked about anything significant lately. But what exactly are you suggesting here? Jerry raised a hand, signaling patience. Just hear me out. One last question. She's unaware that you know about her infidelity, correct? Right, I confirmed. I haven't confronted her or mentioned a word about it. Then your solution is clear. Divorce, he stated plainly. Haven't you been listening to me? I protested. Your lawyer's right that you'd be at a disadvantage if you go into a divorce head-on, he clarified. But if you approach this strategically, that changes. You need her to agree to your terms. How would I even make that happen? I asked, frustrated. Blackmail her with photos and videos? That's not going to work. She's too wrapped up in her lifestyle to care. You're missing the point, Jerry insisted. She'll agree to the terms because she won't realize what's really going on. Have you ever heard of a tax divorce? Perplexed, I shook my head. It was a trend a while back, he explained. Couples would get divorced temporarily to benefit from tax breaks. In December, you'd see a rush of these so-called tax divorces among couples where one partner made significantly more money. After the savings were in place, they'd often remarry on an extravagant trip. Most of those loopholes have closed now, he added, but I doubt your wife knows the ins and outs of tax law, and considering what you've told me, it sounds like she's more interested in her freedom and the lifestyle you provide than a legitimate separation. She's even talked about quitting her job just to have more time to fool around, I admitted. That's perfect, Jerry responded, grinning. We'll use her own greed to our advantage. You can tell her your business is about to grow substantially, but there will be considerable tax implications. Mention that you might need to travel more, and she could soon quit her job altogether. That way, he continued, she'll see herself in the best of both worlds, more free time and more money. Present the tax divorce as a mutual benefit, with a remarriage celebration in Hawaii and a financial boost. She'll be all for it. Is this actually legal? I asked, skeptical. Absolutely, Jerry assured. We'll make it official, with fair terms. Your business remains yours, and there's no alimony. I'll get a draft going and have it to you soon. It'll work. Just make sure she doesn't suspect you're aware of the affair. I knew that would be the hardest part, keeping my contempt for Violet hidden. I had nearly lost my composure when she started mentioning she'd have to work late on Tuesday and Thursday nights. The private investigator's report revealed the truth. Tuesday was for the mechanic, Thursday for the salesman. Despite my anger, I managed to keep it together, masking my frustration with subtle sarcasm. A week later, Jerry handed me the finalized documents. Along with the paperwork, he included a report I could show Violet, highlighting the savings we'd see and outlining the necessary steps, like transferring the house to her name. Luckily, the discussion would take place on Wednesday, far from her meet-up days. When she walked in, I was at the kitchen table with 3 organized folders laid out. Honey, we need to talk, I said, knowing those words would immediately grab her attention. Her face went pale, her eyes darting toward the folders in unease. Is something wrong? She stammered, her voice wavering. Calmly, I opened the first folder. No. This is a good plan, I began, holding Violet's gaze. But before you react, I need you to hear me out fully. I paused, watching her expression carefully. The company's been doing well, as you know, and it's about to get even better. I've managed to provide for us comfortably so far, but most of our profits have had to go right back into the business. Now, though, it's finally paying off. The only hitch? Taxes. I took a deep breath before continuing. I met with my accountant, and he found a way for us to save around $50,000 this year. Violet's eyes widened. 50,000? We're not breaking any laws, right? She sounded both eager and concerned. Not at all. He assured me it's completely legal and actually pretty common, I replied, hoping to ease her mind. But there's a catch. We need to do something unconventional. I pulled out a second folder, letting it sit in front of her. It's called a tax divorce. I saw her gasp, but I quickly gestured for her to stay calm. Listen to me, Violet. People do this all the time. It's a way to avoid what they call the marriage penalty. I explained, with our new revenue, that penalty is going to be a lot more costly. My accountant Jerry told me that many of his clients divorce in December and then, with the money they save, treat themselves to a luxury vacation in January where they get remarried. The government made one change, though. You have to stay divorced for at least 6 months to avoid fraud. Jerry mentioned it specifically in case you looked it up. Violet was still reeling, her face a mask of disbelief. I realized I needed to switch tactics. It's just paperwork, really, I reassured her. Jerry did say that we might need to stay divorced the entire year to maximize the benefits in the second year, which could really pay off. I leaned in a little. It means a few more hours on my end, a few more business trips, but in the long run, this could really make a difference for both of us. You might even be able to leave your job if you want, I suggested. Her expression softened, and I could almost see her weighing the benefits. The idea of more money, and the freedom that came with it, was tempting. She glanced up at me, curiosity beginning to override her shock. "So what exactly would this entail?" she asked slowly. I opened the third folder. We'd need to go through a legal divorce. We'd have to divide our assets on paper. I pointed to the paperwork. I'd sign over the house to you with a quitclaim deed, and we'd split our bank accounts. I'll have all the utilities transferred into your name, though the payments would still come from my account. Nothing would really change for us, except that we'd end up with a lot more money. Violet's face shifted as if she was about to argue, but I decided to preempt her. "Look, I know our marriage means a lot to you. We don't have to do this if you're uncomfortable," I said, letting my words hang in the air. "We could just pay the extra taxes." I could tell she was on the verge of agreeing. "No, you're right," she finally said, nodding. "I don't like the idea of a divorce, but if it's just on paper, the benefits are worth it." Suppressing a smile, I kept my voice level. "I'm glad you see it that way. Jerry did mention that we'd need to move quickly if we want this to work. There's a petition to sign and a few authorizations to get this rolling. After that, he'll handle everything else." "He also suggested you read over everything before signing," I added, sliding the papers toward her. "Oh, and I've got a trip starting Friday that'll run through the weekend." I knew this little detail would help sway her, my dutiful wife who seemed increasingly invested in her own interests. Violet picked up the paperwork without hesitation. "I'll go through this tonight and sign so you can get it back to your accountant," she said, nodding. She signed the documents before I left for the trip I'd mentioned. In truth, there was no business trip, but I needed time to set up a few things and confirm whether she'd jump at the opportunity. As expected, she couldn't resist. I had discreet cameras installed in the house, and within an hour of my departure, the mechanic was there, right in our bedroom. The divorce was finalized just as anticipated, with the only significant shift being the end of our intimate relationship. Violet inquired about this a few times, but I always deflected, citing job stress and the demands of new clients. She didn't press further, likely because her 2 boyfriends were meeting her needs. Despite having no desire to witness her with other men, I kept track of her activities, not out of jealousy, but to be sure she hadn't uncovered my intentions. I had grown numb to her infidelity. It wasn't what I cared about. My concern was whether she'd figured out my plan. The divorce officially concluded when the judge signed the final decree a week after we filed, but there were legal limits on when modifications could be made and for what reasons. Jerry, my attorney, advised that we'd need to wait a full 180 days before making any irreversible moves. As that milestone neared, I was ready to put everything behind me. I arranged a meeting with Jerry to discuss the cleanest way to leave. I wanted out, but I also wanted her disgrace to be public. I wanted her cheating laid bare for everyone to see. "Listen, Joseph," Jerry cautioned, "if you make it obvious that you knew about her affairs before the divorce, she could argue it was a setup to shield assets. That could backfire." "But she's the one cheating. She should be the one punished," I argued. "Isn't there a way to ensure that?" "Let's not take any unnecessary risks. Here's the simplest plan," Jerry replied. "Catch her with one of her boyfriends. Snap a few pictures to back it up, then walk away. Just don't remarry. With that evidence alone, you can cut ties cleanly." "That's it?" She just goes on like nothing happened? Well, not exactly. She won't have any stake in your company, no alimony, and you're free of her. Isn't that what you wanted? I frowned, still unsatisfied. There must be a way to humiliate her without compromising the financial split. Jerry held up his hand. Actually, you have footage of her carrying on after the divorce, don't you? I nodded. Then use that. Let people know you're not remarrying, cut off the utilities, and stop her money supply. Drop the news about her boyfriends to their wives. Just sit back and watch the fallout. I smiled, finally seeing an opportunity. I could claim I discovered her affairs after the divorce. This would still work, right? Joseph, Jerry replied. This would be the perfect time to cut her off. We're about to secure the first of those big contracts, which means serious money coming your way. I suggest you find your own place, move out, and let her sit in the silence for a week before breaking the news. I paused, considering one final complication. My kids. How do I handle them in all this? They're the hardest part of this equation. They might side with you, Jerry replied. After all, she's always preached about honesty and loyalty, hasn't she? Remember how she once exposed our daughter for going to a concert with another guy, claiming dishonesty ruins relationships? Jerry chuckled. Quite the hypocrite, isn't she? Your daughter might actually feel betrayed when she learns the truth. One more thing, Jerry added. There's nothing you need to sign to finalize this. You're free. Just stop paying her bills and it's done. I left our meeting, fully committed to ending things with Violet. I'd already scoped out an apartment and was ready to move within the week. But before taking the final step, I wanted to speak to both my children. Both were in their respective college towns taking summer classes. My son Derek quickly took my side. He was furious with his mother, but agreed to stay quiet until I'd officially moved out. My daughter Jennifer, however, was harder to convince. She struggled to accept that her mother could ever do something so deceptive. She had always preached honesty and fidelity, so my daughter found it hard to believe her mother would betray me. Reluctantly, I showed her just enough evidence to reveal the truth. The moment she saw the videos, anger ignited in her. Jennifer was ready to confront her mother directly. I managed to convince her to hold off until I could move out of the house. Once back in town, everything was in place. The new apartment lease was signed, and my second contract was almost finalized. In 2 days, the furniture would arrive, and I'd finally begin my plan. The first step was simple enough: move out while Violet was at work. With the help of a rental truck and some friends, I packed everything I wanted: my keepsakes, my tools, my personal belongings, but none of the furniture. I also removed the cameras I had discreetly set up around the house. Violet had grown so accustomed to my absence that she didn't even notice I'd left for days. It was only when I carried out the second part of my plan that she realized something was off. I sent untraceable emails to the wives of her 2 lovers, the mechanic and the salesman, attaching video files of them with Violet. I felt a twinge of guilt, knowing the upheaval these families were about to face. But I hadn't started this mess. I was just finishing it. Within 30 minutes of sending those emails, Violet left me a voicemail asking me to call her, likely under the impression I was still out of town. Her calls became increasingly frantic as she noticed my clothes and personal items were missing. I ignored each one, along with her flood of text messages. My children reached out to me, telling me how their mother had called in a panic, asking if they'd heard from me. Both of them covered for me, claiming they hadn't spoken to me in a while. They tried pressing her for details, but she shared nothing, refusing even to explain why she was so desperate to find me. I let her sit in uncertainty for 2 more days. On Thursday, I decided it was time. Knowing she'd likely be home alone, shaken by the fallout of her affairs, I knocked on the door of the house that was once ours. Violet opened the door, bewildered. "Joseph, why are you knocking? This is your home. Where have you been? I've been calling you for days." I met her gaze coolly. "No, Violet, this is your house now. You have the title after our divorce. May I come in?" She stammered a bit, then invited me inside. "What's all this nonsense? We need to talk about when we're getting remarried. I'm done with these games and this fake divorce." "Good," I replied, smiling. That's exactly what I want to talk about. Her expression flickered between anger and anxiety. Our divorce isn't a game, Violet. It's very real and legal, and you've certainly been making the most of it. A hint of fear crept into her eyes, but she tried to mask it with indignation. What are you talking about? I told you I'm ready to move past this and renew our vows. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, so you noticed my things are gone? I said, barely containing my laughter. Well, I moved out, Violet. I couldn't keep sleeping in the bed you've shared with your lovers. She gasped, stunned. I continued. Let's stop pretending. I know about the 2 men you've been with while I was away. Technically, since we're not married anymore, it isn't cheating. But because of your actions, I've reconsidered my decision to renew our vows. I believe it's best for both of us to stay divorced. That's why I've moved out. Her face contorted with shock and fury. No, that's not how this is going to work. We are still married. The divorce was just a sham for tax purposes. I held her gaze unshaken. Violet, it may have started as a sham, but it's legally binding, and I have no intention of reversing it. I'm going to court. We're still married, and that's a fact. You signed those papers right in front of the judge, and this marriage is legally binding. You could try to argue you lied to the court, but that's a crime, and I'm not supporting you confessing to something illegal. Drop it. I see what's going on here. You figured out about Julian and me, so now you've devised this bogus tax divorce plan just to cut me out of your business share. Well, it's not going to work. Oh my God, Violet. Are you telling me you were seeing other men while we were still married? You're damn well aware I was, and I know it was you who sent those anonymous emails to their wives. Hope you're pleased with yourself. You destroyed 2 marriages with your little scheme. Both men are out of their houses now, dealing with brutal divorce proceedings. Both? You mean there were 2? Yes, Violet. You were cheating on me with 2 men. That aside, the divorce stands. Feel free to throw away your savings trying to reverse it, but it's pointless. You may also want to think about how you'll explain your infidelity to our kids. They're incredibly disappointed. You told them, didn't you? How could you do that? What are you so angry about? I needed to explain why we wouldn't be getting back together. Stop the games. We're married, and that's not changing. Whatever happened with Julian and Tim meant nothing. I'm in love with you. I know I made some mistakes, but I'm ready to be the best wife I can be. That's great, Violet. I'm glad you recognize your mistakes. The next man you marry will benefit from that wisdom. I haven't told your parents yet, by the way. I'll leave that to you unless you'd prefer I do it. My mom was shocked, honestly. She couldn't believe you'd go behind my back. I had to show her some milder video clips just to convince her. She wanted me to tell you you're not welcome at Thanksgiving or Christmas or any family event, and if she ever sees you again, she mentioned she might slap you. Violet went on about me throwing away our marriage, begging for another chance. I left her in the house, sobbing and swearing at me. She even tried to overturn the divorce decree. When that failed, she filed to change the divorce terms. Watching her in court was ridiculous. She openly told the judge I knew she'd been with 2 men for over a year, accusing me of orchestrating the divorce just to avoid sharing my assets. She must have forgotten her parents and our kids were sitting right there in the courtroom when she said all that. After ruling against her, the judge gave her a lecture on infidelity and owning up to her own mistakes. When her parents confronted her, she claimed I was leaving her for another woman to avoid splitting my business with her. That didn't go over well. Her mother ended up slapping her in frustration. Violet turned to Jennifer and Derek for support, but they both turned away, cutting her off. None of them wanted anything to do with her after that hearing. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. When Diane paused, her gaze fixed on him, John responded with a tired, I understand. He couldn't remember when he had started saying those words so often. The phrase felt like a drumbeat in his recent conversations with her, and he was weary of repeating it. It troubled him how he and Diane had reached this fragile point after more than 2 decades together. They'd built a life over 26 years, raised 2 children now away at college, and lived in a beautiful old home Diane had inherited from her grandmother. Together, They had transformed that home, making it their own. They'd added a pool, remodeled the interiors into an open concept, and upgraded the kitchen until it looked like something from a TV design show. John was proud of the result, convinced it could rival anything on HGTV. They also owned a cherished beach house in Hatteras, North Carolina, a place John had inherited and insisted on leaving unchanged. It was an anchor of family memories, preserved exactly as he remembered it from his childhood. Professionally, life seemed just as rewarding. John, now a senior vice president in central logistics, enjoyed the hard-won fruits of his career. Diane, too, was successful, serving as a senior account executive at Richards & Son, a securities firm where she had worked for 2 decades. They had a lovely home, good children, thriving careers, and a seemingly happy marriage, or so he thought, until these recent conversations, where "I understand" had become his reluctant mantra. Diane studied him, silent, as if searching his face. "Do you understand what I'm trying to say?" she asked again. "I understand," he replied, though he hoped she hadn't seen the little mark he'd unconsciously made on the paper in front of him. When he looked down, he counted 32 marks. 32 times in the last 2 days he had said those words to her. He was tired of this cycle. Finally, Diane took a deep breath. "So, we've reached an understanding," she said, her voice steady. "I'll step outside our marriage once, just to experience it." John shook his head, meeting her gaze firmly. "No! I won't agree to this, Diane. I won't betray you, and I can't let you betray me." She seemed genuinely surprised and a little defensive. "I've never cheated on you," she protested. John pressed forward. "I'm willing to move past what's happened already, but no more," he said, trying to keep his tone calm. Diane's expression hardened. "I haven't cheated on you," she countered, though a shadow crossed her face. John continued, his voice measured. "I believe, at least in my eyes, you have. You've gone to dinners alone with him, met him on so-called girls' nights that turned into something more. You've kept up texting him, especially over weekends. That's not innocent." Diane's eyes lowered, and John felt a mix of sadness and frustration. He could see where her actions were leading, as clear as if it were spelled out in front of him. The luxury suite she had booked at the Jefferson Hotel, the 2 brunch reservations, her new dress hidden in the closet, and lingerie tucked into a discreet bag. Purchases clearly not meant for him. He went on, his voice even but edged with finality. "Let's make this clear. I'm offering 2 choices. This Saturday I'll head to the beach house. I'll stop for breakfast on the way, and then I'll be at the beach. I'd love it if you came with me. We can spend the weekend talking, figuring out if we can still make this work. Maybe return the lingerie you bought and bring something back that's meant for us." He waited, watching her, but couldn't read her expression as easily as he once could. "Or," he said, "you can follow through with your plans. Go to the Jefferson Hotel with David Summers, have dinner at Bookbinders, dance at the Tobacco Company Club, and see where the night leads." She looked up at him, finally meeting his gaze, her expression one of disbelief. "If you choose to follow through with him," he continued, "you won't need my permission because once I leave on Saturday without you, this marriage will be over." Diane stared at him, bewildered. She struggled to speak, her mind racing, trying to comprehend how he had known every detail of the plans she thought were secret. Before Diane could respond, John spoke up first. "If you're curious, I have friends at your office. You have friends who genuinely care about you there," he said. "But David Summers? He has no real friends at all." Diane froze as John's words registered. Determined to regain control of the conversation, she countered. "I've been a loyal wife and partner to you for 22 years. "No," John replied flatly. "You've been a faithful wife for 21 years and 10 months. You've been unfaithful since that first lunch with David Summers." Diane felt herself grow defensive. "I haven't cheated on you," she insisted. But John pressed on. "You've already crossed the line with him, haven't you?" Diane stood abruptly, cutting him off. "I did not cheat on you," she said firmly. John's face softened, yet sadness filled his eyes as he continued. "I saw the change in your eyes. They used to stay locked on mine when we made love, but now you turn away, close them, and your face retreats from me in bed. How many times were you with him in spirit when you were with me?" He let out a somber laugh. "Remember when we used to fantasize about a threesome? You've practically fulfilled that now. Only this time the fantasy is overcrowded with him. But I'm done talking about it, Diane. Do you understand?" This wasn't the direction Diane had expected. She tried once more to steer the conversation her way. "John, we have a wonderful life together. Our marriage has been strong. We've raised 2 amazing kids. We both have great careers, and if we stay on track, we can retire early and enjoy a full life together. I cherish our relationship and love, and I want to stay by your side as a devoted wife for the rest of our lives. I'm ready to give you all my days. Just allow me one day for myself." She hesitated before adding, "And one night for him." John's reply was immediate. "One night for him?" he scoffed. "You've had more than one night's worth of intimacy with him in your mind right under my nose." Diane lowered her gaze, her voice trembling. "I could have kept this hidden from you, John. I could have lied, but I wanted to be honest. I thought that, after all our years together, you would understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," he replied coldly. "You've already lied to me for months. You've been slipping away to meet him under false pretenses, attending supposed bachelorette parties that were really dates with him. You shared private dinners, hands entwined, giving him access to parts of you that belonged to me. And what's worse, you brought thoughts of him into our own bed, disrupting our moments with constant messages and sexts. I know everything, Diane, and it doesn't matter how I found out. What matters is if you understand what you're jeopardizing, do you?" Diane's expression grew distant, her gaze empty. John realized with a hollow ache that she couldn't fully grasp what was at stake. He rose, leaving the room in silence. He went to their bedroom, brushed his teeth, and tried to sleep, though he doubted he'd find rest that night. Diane stayed motionless for several minutes. Finally, she reached for her phone and dialed her friend, Janice. When Janice picked up, Diane spoke softly. "John knows everything. He knows about David and our plans for the weekend." Janice's response was swift. "That's bad, Diane. Are you going to cancel it?" Diane hesitated. "I don't know if I can. I already promised David, and he spent a lot on this weekend." Janice's tone grew firm. "Diane, you made vows to John long before this. I was there, remember? I was your maid of honor. David can back out any time. It won't cost him anything." Janice paused, then continued. "Besides, that's no excuse to betray John." "I'm not cheating on him," Diane whispered. "You are cheating, Diane," Janice replied with finality. "When I told you about what George and I did, I made it clear that I'd never have gone through with it without his consent. We chose together, and we made sure it was with someone we'd never see again. I told you we followed every step correctly, yet we're still facing problems we need to work through. You chose to be with a coworker, and now you're trying to rationalize it." Janice was pleading with her. "Forget this plan. Stop seeing David. Get down on your knees and apologize to John," Janice urged. Diane responded in a low voice. "But I need this. I need to know what it's like to be with another man again in my life. David's a good guy, and everyone at work says he's great in bed." Janice shook her head. "A good guy wouldn't go after a married woman. Consider what you're putting at risk just to be another tick on his list." Diane argued. "I won't just be a mark on his list. He's paying attention to me." Janice wanted to yell into the phone, "Don't you see how that makes it even worse? I met David at our bachelorette party. He's attractive, sure, but he's nothing compared to John. You know that, right?" Diane murmured, "I get it." Janice pressed, "Think carefully about this choice. It will change the lives of everyone you care about." Diane sighed. "I thought you'd understand. Of all people, I thought you'd get why I feel I need to do this." Janice tried one more time. "Diane, it's not that I don't understand. It's not that John doesn't understand. It's not about your kids or family or friends not understanding. The issue is that you don't understand." Diane replied, resolved. "Well, John knows about everything I've been doing, and he hasn't stopped me. He won't be happy, but he'll let me do it because he knows how much it matters to me. Now I really need some sleep." Ending the call, Janice looked at her husband, George. "She didn't understand anything I tried to tell her," she murmured. George sighed. I wish I hadn't told her about what happened with us. I thought we'd agreed that would stay between us. Janice flushed slightly. I just needed someone to talk to about our problems. I didn't think it would give her any ideas. George put an arm around her. I know. I'm not upset. Janice's gaze dropped. So, you told John? I can only imagine what he said. Did he suggest dumping me or branding me with a scarlet letter? George smiled. You know John better than that. He asked me a series of questions. As I answered them, I started to think about us more seriously. Then he said, You both got into this together. It was a mutual decision that turned into a major mistake, but only you two can work to fix it. He continued, John made me see that as long as we're both trying to fix things together, we'll be okay. That realization might be the reason we're still together now. Janice's eyes filled with tears. That might be the reason we're still here, and it might also be the reason he's headed for a divorce. George held her close and whispered, If they separate, don't take it on yourself. John's right. If they don't face their issues together, there's no hope. That night, Diane slipped into bed to find John lying awake, his back turned to her. They both shifted to opposite edges of the bed, 2 feet between them that felt like an unbridgeable gulf. In the morning, they went through their routines in silence. After Diane left for work, John took a moment to relax and went over the list he held in his hands. He had arranged to take Friday and Monday off from work. John moved from room to room, photographing each space and documenting its contents. He carefully listed each item, marking those he planned to keep. He downloaded all of their family and wedding photos from the cloud, storing them on a flash drive, but left their wedding album on the coffee table, unable to bring himself to open it. The apartments he toured were nice enough, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he would miss this house. Though he would carry the memories, he knew he would miss the place itself, and above all, the woman he still loved and the life they had built together within these walls. John met with Sandra Lewis, his attorney, whom others had recommended highly. She presented a straightforward settlement plan. Diane would keep the house and her retirement account, while John would keep their beach house and his own retirement savings. John would also pay off her car and their joint credit card debt. They agreed to set aside a portion of their investments for college funds, plus $10,000 for each child to start a charitable fund, and then divide the remaining assets equally. John glanced up after reviewing the proposal and nodded. Sandra told him they could file the paperwork by Wednesday morning. He nodded again, shook her hand, and left the office. Sandra noted that John had spoken very little to her throughout the divorce process, communicating mostly through email. She could sense the sadness and humility he carried. Moments like these often made her question her career choice in family law. John then went to the bank, where he opened a separate account, transferring half of their joint funds into it. He emailed his HR department with a request to redirect his direct deposit to the new account, then planned to update his payment information at home later. Afterward, he met with their investment banker, who informed him that both he and Diane would need to sign for any future transactions on their accounts. John explained that Sandra Lewis would initiate control over the accounts once Diane was officially served. He was unsettled by the sympathetic expressions on the faces of his longtime advisors, realizing they were the first of many people who would react this way as word of the divorce spread. The thought of explaining it to his children left him feeling sick. Meanwhile, Diane did her best to avoid David Summers at work. They met during lunch at Maria's Cafe, a small place he liked to call their spot. She stayed quiet, unwilling to hold his hand, sensing John's presence in every move she made. All day she had been haunted by the feeling of being watched. David, however, seemed oblivious to her discomfort. "I'm really looking forward to this weekend," he said excitedly. "Check-in is at 3 p.m. Any chance we could meet up a little earlier? Maybe have some time alone before dinner?" Diane replied softly, "I don't think so." Back at her desk, she tried to work but found herself constantly glancing around, feeling that a few of her co-workers might be watching her for John. Frustrated and unproductive, she decided to call it a day. In the hallway, she greeted 2 new interns in her department, pausing when she noticed that one wore a Central Logistics sweatshirt. She instantly recognized it as a subtle reminder of John's presence. John, meanwhile, had finished everything on his to-do list. Realizing he hadn't eaten all day, he headed to Maria's cafe. The hostess greeted him with a warm hug. "How's Ben doing?" John asked. Maria smiled. "He's great. He made the baseball team as a freshman and couldn't be happier." "James has loved practicing with him all winter," John replied. "He's thrilled to have his roommate on the team with him." Maria took a seat beside John, adding, "They were here for lunch earlier, but it wasn't exactly a happy scene. Diane seemed nervous, and, as usual, Summers seemed clueless." "He's probably clueless, but he'll still end up in her bed this weekend," John muttered with a hint of resignation. "Don't be so quick to give up," Maria encouraged. "She must mean a lot to you if you've been married this long. She'll realize her mistake. I just hope it's sooner rather than later." Then, after a pause, she asked, "Maryland-style crab cakes with broccoli?" For the first time that day, John managed a small smile. "Sounds just right. Maybe add a beer, something different. Surprise me with one of those pale ales." Meanwhile, Diane arrived home earlier than expected, ready to set her backup plan into action. She would cook John's favorite meal and try once again to bridge the distance between them. Getting him to agree to this one-time date was crucial, but if he couldn't, at the very least, she hoped he could accept her decision. Once the crab cakes were ready, she went upstairs, carefully selecting an outfit she knew he'd like. Her plan for the evening included meeting her friends Janice and Lisa for a drink, one last talk before Saturday's big decision. She quietly packed a few bags from her closet into her car trunk, Victoria's Secret, among others, doing her best to avoid embarrassing either of them. John came home at his usual time, pleasantly surprised by the aroma wafting from the kitchen. Diane handed him a bottle of light beer as he walked into the living room. "Take off your jacket and tie," she said, gesturing to the sofa. "Dinner will be ready in just a few minutes." When he saw the familiar plate of Maryland crab cakes with broccoli on the table, he felt a brief moment of gratitude. It was his favorite meal, after all. Yet for the first time, he found himself wishing he were at Maria's cafe instead. Anywhere but here, really. As they ate in silence, Diane finally gathered her courage to speak. "John, I love you. I really hope you can understand why I need to do this." Before she could say more, he interrupted, his tone flat. "I get it." His gaze flickered over her. "You look nice tonight. Going out?" "Yes, I'm meeting Janice and Lisa for a couple of drinks." Diane's voice softened. "But John, I'm telling you this because I love you and I need—" Yeah, he said, brushing her off, the coldness in his tone sharp. "You want me to understand, I do." He pushed his plate away, standing up. "I'm done. Lost my appetite." He glanced at her one last time. "You look really good. Guess you couldn't wait for tomorrow. And when you see David Summers, tell him I said he can drop dead." He turned and left, heading for the living room, and the sound of the television soon filled the silence she left behind. Diane stayed seated, wrapping her arms around herself as a wave of doubt washed over her for the first time. After a few moments, she rose, clearing away the remnants of their dinner. Now was not the moment for second thoughts. She had to stay firm. She texted Janice, "Can we meet earlier? Leaving in 5. John heard the door click shut, her footsteps fading outside. He sat there, staring at the TV screen, realizing he'd been mindlessly watching for almost 20 minutes. The crushing sadness weighed down on him, so heavy it seemed to suffocate. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small box, shaking 2 pills into his palm and washing them down with the rest of his beer. This was new. He'd never taken sleeping pills before. But tonight, he knew he'd need them, just as he knew he'd need all his energy to face Saturday. Diane arrived first at the bar, arranging a table for 3 and waiting as her eyes took in the scene around her. Men and women moved in a choreography of seduction, though to her it looked like a display of desperation and solitude. Was this really the future she was choosing? But as her friends approached, she put those thoughts aside. Observing their expressions, she prepared herself. They looked tense, and she braced herself for what was sure to be a difficult conversation. Lisa sat back and fixed Diana with a hard stare. What on earth are you thinking? Have you completely lost it? Are you seriously planning to betray your husband with some lowlife from work? Is this a midlife crisis, or did you take a blow to the head? She shook her head, baffled. This has to be the dumbest idea I've ever heard, and coming from someone as smart as you, I'm shocked. If you actually go through with this, you're not who I thought you were. Diana gave her a dry smile. Well, good evening to you too, Lisa. I'm doing fine. How are you? Lisa just stared, her disapproval clear. Diana glanced over at Janice, looking for a lifeline. Janice sighed, shaking her head. Diana, you know how I feel about this whole adventure of yours. I'd say more, but I'd probably sound even less polite than Lisa. Diana managed a sad smile. Think you could outswear her? Janice didn't smile. No one curses like Lisa, but even she left out betrayer, cheater, fool, and disappointment. And I have to be honest, I think you're heading for the biggest mistake of your life. But I love you, and I'll be here, no matter what. Lisa just groaned. This is beyond stupid, but yeah, I'll be here for you too. Just don't expect me not to say I told you so. Diana wrapped her arms around them both. Thank you. I know you don't approve, but it means a lot to have your support anyway. You both know I don't do things halfway. I've committed to this, and I'm seeing it through to the end. Lisa's tone softened. Diana, there's nothing natural about infidelity, and you know that committing to cheating just mocks the word commitment. Diana sat quietly, absorbing her friend's words before finally standing up. I've got things to wrap up for tomorrow. Let me grab a bottle of wine. Stay and have a glass with me. Later, Diana finished her errands and pulled up to her darkened house. She texted Janice, knowing she'd hear her out despite her anger. Opening her car trunk, she remembered the things she'd bought. Leaving them in the car overnight would ruin them in the cold. She stored them in the downstairs closet, and then slipped into bed beside John, hoping for sleep that refused to come. Hours later, at 3 a.m., she gave up, quietly heading downstairs. Her gaze fell on their wedding album on the coffee table. She figured if John could look at it someday, so could she. After barely skimming 2 pages, she shut it and broke down in tears. Somehow, she had to make him understand. By 5 a.m., she gave up on sleep entirely and took a long, hot shower. She slipped into her new lingerie, then put on the outfit she had carefully chosen. Grabbing her packed suitcase and a Victoria's Secret bag, she went to the kitchen and wrote John a quick note. The irony struck her, and she chuckled. She was leaving him a classic Dear John letter. Setting the note by the coffee maker, she switched off the lights and left the house, determined to see things through. Meanwhile, John woke at 6:15 a.m. Reaching over, he found her side of the bed empty, and it hit him. She hadn't come back. His mind raced, picturing her in David Summers' bed, and the thought cut deep. For the first time, he doubted himself. Would it have been better to let her experience what she needed, even if it meant losing her, if only for a night? She had promised she would come back, but now he wasn't sure he wanted her to. Had he sacrificed a lifetime of happiness to his own pride? As John looked back on the situation, he realized that he could never love her again if she chose David Summers. He could live with her prioritizing her children. That was what any mother should do. But he couldn't bear the thought of her choosing another man over her husband. Their 22 years together had built a foundation of respect and loyalty. She had always counted on that from him. He expected nothing less in return. Hoping she'd be home, he checked every bedroom, but there was no trace of her. Finally, he stepped into the kitchen, where a note was left on the coffee maker. With a heavy heart, he read her brief message. Please understand. John sank into a kitchen chair, overwhelmed with emotion. He dreaded the possibility that she might actually leave, yet a part of him clung to the hope that she'd stay, abandon this reckless idea, and remain his wife. He poured himself a coffee and went upstairs, feeling the weight of her absence. After a quick shower, he got dressed, packed some clothes in a duffel bag, and headed downstairs. Filling a thermos with coffee, he walked to the front door. He took a final, lingering look at the home that had been his sanctuary, then turned off the lights and stepped into the brisk morning. The cold air hit him, a sudden shock. but perhaps it was just what he needed to snap himself out of his stupor. As he approached his car, he realized the engine was already running. Opening the back door to stow his bag, he was surprised to see a suitcase and a Victoria's Secret bag in the back seat. Glancing to the passenger side, he saw Diane sleeping, curled up in the car. John closed the door softly, overcome with emotion as he watched her. His heart filled with relief. There was still hope for them. Taking a deep breath, he opened the car door and got inside. Diane stirred and looked up at him. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice soft as she wiped sleep from her eyes. "Good morning," he replied. After a brief silence, he asked, "How long have you been waiting here?" Diane checked her watch and said, "About 2 hours. I couldn't sleep, and I was worried you'd leave without me, so I decided to wait in the car. I filled up the tank and got us some Krispy Kreme donuts for the road." John opened the box and chuckled. "Looks like there are only 7 left." Diane, more awake now, smiled. "A dozen was for 2. I already ate my share." Laughing, John took one of the donuts and let its sweetness linger. It would tide him over until they could stop for breakfast at the Virginia diner. "How do you feel about their country ham and biscuits?" he asked, testing the waters. Diane shook her head. "I'm not exactly dressed for Virginia diner." John looked at her puzzled. "Diane, you can wear anything you want there. No one cares." She smiled, playful now. "Maybe so, but you can't wear almost nothing." She unzipped her coat, revealing a deep purple set of lingerie beneath. John's eyes widened. "It's almost nothing," he agreed, smiling. "Is the coat new?" "Yes," she said. "I traded in that dress for this coat. And in case you missed the Victoria's Secret bag, I returned the other items and got these just for you." She lifted his chin, her eyes locking with his. "This is for you, this and everything beneath it, for all the days and nights of our lives." She took a deep breath and added, "I'm sorry for what I put you through these last months. You were right about almost everything." She paused, then continued, "There were 2 things you got wrong, though. Last night, I dressed up for you, not anyone else. And yes, I did meet with Janice and Lisa. But as for David, I never brought him into our bed. I never closed my eyes to imagine him. The truth is, I couldn't meet your gaze because I was ashamed of my intentions. The shame didn't stop me from wanting to be with him, though, and that's what I regret." In a quiet voice, she said, "Now I truly understand." John looked at her, his heart swelling, and kissed her. They had much to discuss and a long road to rebuild their relationship. But John's heart lifted as he sensed that Diane finally understood. As he drove past the familiar Virginia diner, he glanced over at Diane, who had drifted off to sleep not long after they hit the highway. His thoughts wandered back to everything that had happened on Friday. John knew that if they were to have an honest conversation, he'd have to come clean. A memory surfaced from 7 years before, when he had been in San Francisco for a quarterly corporate meeting. At that time, he was a department head, and his latest initiative had just reaped a significant reward for the company. Foreign corporations were rapidly buying out American firms, but John had seen a promising opportunity in it. He'd advocated for the acquisition of a financially struggling Italian firm known for its talented engineers. With his mentor's approval, the CEO backed the deal, which ultimately became a remarkable success. This acquisition not only brought skilled engineering teams into the fold, but opened doors to the European market and gave the company a solid presence in China. The deal generated an impressive revenue, over $1 billion. For John's mentor, it was a crowning achievement, and for John, it was a career milestone, setting him on the fast track in the corporate world. Meanwhile, Diane had been back home in Virginia, attending a high school concert with their boys. John celebrated that evening with colleagues, including Debbie Maris, a sharp marketing rep from another division. He and Debbie had a long-standing, playful rapport, filled with friendly banter. A few drinks in, John felt his usual barriers relax, but his attraction was heightened, not diminished. They danced, closer than any married man should with a woman who wasn't his wife. Debbie pressed against him, her touch lingering, and before long she slipped her underwear into his hand. They made their way to her suite, sharing heated kisses in the elevator. Her blouse and bra were already on the floor as she beckoned him with an inviting smile. But as she unzipped her skirt and held her hand out to him, John found himself paralyzed. A sudden clarity washed over him. He felt an overwhelming sense of loyalty to Diane and a firm realization of what truly mattered to him. He couldn't follow Debbie into that room. He took a step back, then bolted to the elevator. In his own room, he showered, feeling an intense need to erase any trace of the encounter. Despite the late hour in Richmond, he called Diane. She answered sleepily after a few rings. Fighting tears, he shared his career triumph and news of a promotion with a substantial raise. Diane's voice, filled with pride and love, assured him that she had always believed in his success. Her words reminded him that he had almost celebrated one of the greatest moments of his life with the wrong person. As they drove towards the coast, John knew he had to tell her everything. He wanted her to understand his newfound perspective. He could finally empathize with her, fully understanding the trials she'd faced. When Diane returned to the family wholeheartedly, the lingering connection with David Summers faded, becoming a distant memory. Meanwhile, David Summers sat alone in Fred Davis's office at Richards & Sons. Fred, the vice president of human resources, had called David in first thing that Monday morning, leaving David puzzled. True, he had missed a few deadlines in his pursuit of Diane, but he believed he could quickly make up for lost time. This sudden meeting disrupted his carefully laid plans, especially as he hadn't had a chance to talk to Diane about the weekend. Not only had she caught him off guard, but she had sent 2 friends, Janice and Lisa, to confront him. David had been rattled by Lisa, a woman whose sharp tongue and fearless demeanor left even hotel security too intimidated to intervene. As he turned, preparing to leave, his eyes landed on a family photo on Fred Davis's desk. There was Fred, smiling with his 3 sons and his wife, none other than Lisa, the woman who had publicly put him in his place. In that moment, David understood exactly why he was here. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.